Hey everybody, this is Shaman bin Yeshua, and this is a testimony of a black Israelite. Before I go and share with you what the Lord has done for me and the process He has led me to this point, I want to first give all glory, honor, and praise to our King Jesus Christ. I give all glory to Him for everything He has done for me in my life, for keeping His hedge of protection around me, for keeping His hand of love upon me, and for helping me to see the most difficult times in my life through, and preserving my life so I could be here today to give you the testimony. All glory goes to Jesus Christ. And regardless as to what is revealed, may it be understood that we are all one in Jesus Christ. Whether we be Jew or Gentile, it matters not. For the moment that you receive Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, we are all grafted into the olive tree, and we become one people under God, under Jesus Christ. So we stand together in unity and declaring that it doesn't matter where our nationalities, ethnicities, and our background may be coming from. The most important thing is the spiritual state of the body of Christ, the spiritual state of the sons and daughters of the Most High, especially in this hour. So we are all one. We are all now spiritual Israel because of the testimony and the confession that we have declared to make Jesus Christ our Lord and Savior. And so on March 12, 2016, the Lord led me to a place that can help me find out more about exactly where I came from. Like, it has been said that, African Americans, we all come from Africa, etc. But the thing is that in Africa, the continent of Africa is made up of many countries. It's just not one big country, but many different parts. So it really started to make me wonder what parts of Africa exactly did I come from? Because you see, I did not come from a typical, African American background. As a matter of fact, my parents are from the Caribbean islands. So during the slave trade, etc., the group of slaves that made it to the Caribbean islands was not the same group of people that made it to America. As a matter of fact, it was in the island of Haiti. And so in Haiti, it was pretty much the French who owned that territory at the time. And they imported the African slaves from wherever, they came from Africa, to Haiti, in which they settled in and they resided in. So pretty much my lineage is different from that of the African Americans that was taken straight into America during the Great Slave Trade back in the day. And so getting back to this, so on 12th of March 2016, I made it to this place. I came across this place and I went to go, first I made the phone call to find out if they actually do support hereditary DNA testing, ancestral DNA testing, and they said yes they do. And I guess they haven't done it in a long time, because when I was inquiring about it, they seem to have needed to bring themselves back to speed as to what was the process in regards to it. And so once they explained to me, how the ancestral origins work and how the DNA markers are laid out and how accurate it is in identifying, specific locations of, the people group in which I may belong in, then I began to have more confidence to, understand that this is the place that the Lord was leading me to. And so it was the case. And so I went over there to, any lab now, any lab test now, and then they began to go through the whole process and trying to find out, DNA matches and stuff like that, in which many people are familiar to. And so from there, I just had to wait and see what the results would be. And so at first, what they told me is that the results can take as long as 10 to 15 days, maybe even longer, depending on the amount of, orders that they have may be backed up for a little bit. So I had to wait for a while. And so what ended up happening is that on a day in which I went to take the samples, I thought that maybe it would be just like a 10 to 15 day turnaround and I should get the information. Because my wife, she also did it too, and she discovered some stuff about her background, which is very interesting. But her came rather quickly, but mine was taking some time. And so, days started going by, the days became weeks, and the weeks became a full month. And then after a full month, it was like a month and a half. And I thought, you know what, maybe there's just some things that's going on and I just need to wait on the Lord until the Lord tells me when it's time for me to go and try to find out what's going on. And so after pretty much putting it in the back of my mind and not really thinking about it as much, my wife reminded me last weekend that I needed to go ahead and get in contact with them to find out if something happened, because I didn't hear back from them for a while. And so I told her, yep, I'll take care of it. Probably on Monday when they're open again, I'll give them a call. And so that day was on the 25th of April 2016, which is actually today in which I'm making this recording. And also what is interesting is that today is the Feast of First Fruits, the Happy Resurrection Day to everyone, because according to the Hebrew biblical calendar, today is the day in which the Lord resurrected from the dead. And so I would just want to say Happy Resurrection Day, Happy First Fruits. Praise Jesus, because of the fact that he risen from the dead, we now have everlasting life. All glory be to God. And so getting back to the story, is that so when I called them up and I told them, hey, I was just calling to inquire about the status of the results because I haven't heard anything from them for a while. They thought it was kind of strange because they thought that the results already came in, it was taken care of already. And so they went to go and look at their records to find out what's the status of the test results. And when they pulled up the online profile, it said still testing. And they were like, wait a minute, that's kind of weird. Like, why would it take so long to still go through the testing process? It should have been done weeks ago. And so they did some further digging, and it turns out that they've actually gotten the results back. If you look at the screen before you, it says MetaPro Direct. If you look down at the bottom, it says Laboratory Director, and it was signed off on the 17th of March 2016. So for some reason in the database, that information never changed. So it was there since the 17th, but it was not yet the time in which the Lord wanted me to go and find out about this, because since that time, there's been a lot more things which took place leading up to this, appointed time, this special occasion that I feel is the reason why the Lord wanted me to wait until this day to see this message and to bring forth what's in it. And so now to help you understand what you're looking at, it says the genetic profile informational test, right? You go to the DNA lab, they take the different markers. There's 22 markers to help identify, our DNA makeup, and to help correlate that to the people, to other different people group in which you're close to. For example, DNA testing to find out who is the parent of a child and stuff like that is pretty much the same exact process, but the only difference is that they're taking that DNA marker and they're comparing that to groups of people around the world. So that lets you know how accurate it is when it comes to identifying people group, because the same kind of method you're seeing here is the same method that is being used to find out if a male is the father of a child. And so that DNA, accuracy that comes with this process is very awesome and it's outstanding. And if you look at the marker, it says the analyzed male profile is expected to occur 1N. So it's saying that it's pretty much saying that in this many amount of black people in the world, my marker will show up the exact same pattern. And so if you look at that number, it says 335-046-988-409, etc., etc., etc. That is more than a number that I don't even think is in existence today. Because the highest that I think that I can go is trillion. And this thing still has 4 other places to let you know how accurate it is, how there is not a single person in the world that can match this exact DNA makeup. That's how unique our DNA pattern is that when we have that DNA pattern that has been created and ordained by God, is that he makes you very, very, very unique. So unique that it won't be until this many amount of people you see there. And this is only for the black population, because I'm African American, right? Well, yeah, I'm African American. They're saying that after this many amount of people will that exact same pattern occur. So we are indeed very, very unique to God. And so now when we take when they're taking this result and compare it to a specific people group around the world, it's going to be very, very, very accurate as to the knowledge of where our people currently reside in around the world. All right, so now part of the package, and when they did the DNA screening to find out my ancestral background, is that they give you this profile, this ancestral origins profile booklet, which actually shows a breakdown of how migration has occurred over the past, thousands of years. And then what they're going to do is that they're going to take my DNA makeup and insert it to where the people which closely matches my DNA pattern reside today. As I said previously, it's kind of like, a male discovering if he is the father of a child. Well, in a similar manner, they're taking my DNA and trying to find out, all right, so through all the people in the world in which we have a database of DNA matching, who does this DNA strand most closely resembles to? Because you know that we are all unique. And so what they're doing is find out who in the population of the world has a people group that resides in a specific region that is very close to matching this DNA pattern. And so now what we have here is a screen which shows my DNA sequence, etc. And you have the rank of the regions around the world and the number of population which matches the number of people in that region. So if you look at the map, there is a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I'm looking at 12 right now. So 12 regions around the world in which they're discovering different, population groups of people matching various DNA strands, etc. All right. So of the 12 regions, the ones that ranks the top 3, where it actually narrows down to where my DNA has the people, or my DNA matches a specific people group, is what you see before you. Now the funny thing is that they said that it is most of the time you will only have 2 ranks or 2 regions. It says that it is not very often that you'll have 3 regions. And so the reason why that you have 3 regions there instead of 1 or 2 is because of what you see ranking as number 1. And so what is ranking as number 1 is African immigrants. All right. And so what that means is that in a population group of 12 specific identified people group having my DNA pattern, they are known to be African immigrants in the country that they are residing in Africa. Or in other words, the locals who are in these African countries do not recognize this people group as people of origin. Rather, there are aliens, they're foreigners. They came to occupy that particular land in which the locals are sharing that land with them now. And so I find this kind of weird, because if I'm supposed to be of African descent, right, then that means that I should have a specific origin of people there that says that, hey, he is, an African person who resided with this African people group. But that's not the case. So ranking at number 1 for African, for the regional affiliation is African immigrants. That means that the people that I am closely associated with, the people that I most likely came from, are residing in countries in Africa where they are the immigrants in there. And so that makes you ask the question, like, wait a minute. So if I'm an immigrant, if my people is an immigrant in the places in Africa in which they are currently residing in, then where exactly did we come from? So that's rank number 1. And as you see, rank number 1 is almost twice the number of populations matching rank number 2. It's not even a close tie. So rank number 2 is saying that now these are the people of origin that actually lives and were born in that territory that matches my DNA pattern. And then coming in number 3, you have one particular population of people, a people group in Northern Africa that matches my DNA pattern. And so now we have to ask the question, like, what is going on here? Why is normally, you would have a set in stone, this is where you're from. Your people was born and originated in this part of Africa. But no, according to the DNA test, it's telling me that the people that I belong to are immigrants in the places in which they reside in, and it's by a large number. And so when you go to the diagram, well, the names of the countries down below, it gives you the top 10 rank population matches of the people who actually resides in there as to what specific region or country they reside in. And so the listing that you have there speaking specifically of Africa, you have Angolan, I think that's how you pronounce it, right? Angolan. Then you have Guinea Bissau, right? And then you have Wanda, and then you have Berbers, which is in Egypt. So these are the countries in Africa where the people I come from who live in that area as immigrants, because the locals know that they're immigrants since they migrated to their country, reside in. And so when it comes to America, right? Because remember, I told you I come from a different strand of people. I didn't come from the ones who came straight from, Africa straight into America. It says that the people who closely matches my DNA pattern resides in New York, Alabama, and Connecticut. And so now on the next page, I made it a lot easier to show a geographical map of Africa to get a better idea as to what we're looking at. And so as we mentioned before, how for ranked number 1 in regional affiliation is African immigrants, where pretty much the people in which my DNA pattern matches to were not actually the original inhabitants of that particular territory, but they actually immigrated there. From where, we don't know. But as we look on the map, you see that these are the 5 specific countries in which those population group which closely matches my DNA pattern resides in. And so the most common thing that I see here is the fact that they all reside along the coastal waters, along the coastlands. So that means that, wherever they migrated to is that they strategically knew where they wanted to place themselves to have the best chance of prosperity. They stayed out of the middle concentration of Africa, but dispersed along the water, the coastal borders. And so what I still find interesting is about Egypt, is that there is one population group that was discovered, which ranks number 3 out of 12, which has a people group there which closely matches my DNA pattern. And the reason why I find this interesting is that we know that in North Africa, it is predominantly, inhabited by people of Arabic descent. And so being the fact that I am of, African, I am of black skin color, the fact that there is a small remnant, of people who closely matches my DNA pattern residing in Egypt is pretty amazing to me. And so this here gives more of a clarity as to where, out of the many countries that is in Africa, where exactly the people that I closely belong to currently reside in, and more than likely settled in over a long period of time. And so after seeing this information, this DNA information which tracked this, I was really shocked by what I found, because I was thinking that it might have been some common trend, or that my DNA marker would be scattered everywhere in Africa, where it would just be a general population that would have my DNA marking, in which I can easily say, oh well, they came from Sudan, Ethiopia, Chad, Nigeria, etc. But that is not the case. Is that the DNA marker was so precise that it actually detailed that my people group came from those, arrows that you see right there, those who closely resemble my DNA pattern. All right, so the next thing we'll take a look at is a detailed breakdown of the population match, which closely relates to, my DNA pattern from the test that they did. So if you look to the left, right, you have your legend. Let me zoom in a little bit so you can see it a lot better. So these are the symbols that matches different areas and different ethnicities on the map. And also you have 3 different colors. You have green for best match, yellow for good match, and red for pretty much weak to no match at all. And so when we go to my pattern, what you would see here is that from this legend here, it says African immigrants. So these are those who were migrated from Africa, it turns out, who migrated from Africa into this region, dating back mainly around the time of slavery, when we were exported out of Africa into the Western nation. And so this right here is the predominant area where you find my genetic pattern of African immigrants, and this here would be the Caribbean islands. And over here you have even some other matches where you have green and yellow. So these are your best matches and your good matches, right, in the Western nation. And you even have some markers over here down in South America. But when we go back to the principal focus in Africa, what you see here is that there's a pretty clustered population. This is North Africa. This is where you will have most of your Middle Eastern Arabic people residing in, like Libya, Egypt, etc. And so up in this northern region here, there's a pretty dense cluster of people, of Africans, because remember when we go to the legend, right, it speaks about the Africans, because remember you have the African immigrants which were exported out of Africa over here. And now for those who continue to reside there, there is a close DNA match of Africans residing in northern Africa that has my same DNA match. You have one strong match here, which is actually in the country of Egypt. And then what makes it very interesting is that you have this yellow plus sign here. So in Israel, there's weak to no match at all. But very close to Israel, you have a good match. And also this would be Saudi Arabia, Yemen area where there's a good match. Then this would be moving towards the Syrian, Iranian area. Over here it's like Baghdad and Pakistan. So I have a good DNA match of people, a population group residing in the northern part of Israel, as well as southern Israel, clustered in this one particular region. And then you also have strong DNA matches here for Africa, for Africans in the southern part of Africa, South Africa. And as you can see, the dwelling, and this here is actually Ethiopia, Somalia region, where there's also other DNA matches close to me in these regions. So it all dwells along the coastlines. Note how in the central part of Africa, there's hardly any DNA matches pertaining to me. And I'll explain to you why this is the case. So what is this plus sign here? So if these symbols right here is the Africans, right? And this here is the African immigrants from the time of slavery being exported, then what are these plus signs? Who are these people that have a close DNA match to me? Well, when we go back to the legend, it turns out that the plus sign are Middle Easterns, or in other words, Arabs. So in this region here, I have African and Arabic ties, which matches closely to my DNA. That is very interesting. And so once again, remember, green is best match, yellow is good match, and red is no match at all. This is why there's a bunch of red here for, like, different regions around the world, etc. So now the question is that what makes this population group, these people groups, so different, in which there's hardly any DNA matches coming from Central Africa? So the center part of Africa, the Sahara Desert. So I had to make a request back to the people who actually did my results to help me clearly identify what is the difference between African immigrants to African, and also try and see where I get this Middle Eastern DNA match coming from. Like, this is all DNA, as I said before, and it's very accurate. So pretty much in my bloodline, I have African and Middle Eastern traits in me. So this is Israel, and these are the Middle Eastern countries, right? Middle Eastern, where I have a close DNA match to, and then also this cluster right here with this good DNA match. And the reason why it is not green is because, remember, there's both African and Middle Eastern people that dwell there, so there could have been a mixing of the two, which actually weakened the DNA pattern compared to further down in South Africa, where there'll be less influence from the Middle East. Alright, so this here is a email transaction that took place between me and the people that work at Any Lab Test now in Pensacola, trying to get some more clarification as to what they mean by African immigrant. Because remember, on the diagram it said African immigration, African and North African. So I wanted to get more clarification as to what they meant by, the ties that I had, the population ties that I had with those of the African immigration branch. And so I'm about to read to you the email transaction which took place. And so when I actually went there, as a matter of fact, to get the ancestral chart that you saw in the last piece, they were not able to give me the upfront answer right away because they were not too sure, since it's been a while since they performed one of these ancestral hereditary testing. So what they did is that they forwarded the request up to their supervisor to get more clarification to ensure I get the right answer. And so on the first email that you see down here, it says, hi blank. So now I blanked out the names of the employees because it's not important that they are mentioned here. But I did leave, my information on there in case you guys want to hit me up with an email and ask me some questions or have some comments, whatever. But the name of those who were part of the transaction are lined out. And so it says, hi blank. I have copied one of our customers on this result, and he has a question for you. On the report under regional affiliation is lists African immigration, African, and North African. What is the difference in African immigration versus African or North African? So that was the question that was forwarded up to the supervisor. And then I got a response back that says, I posted the question to the analyst and will let you know what I learned. Thank you. All right, actually this was the response from the supervisor to the one who inquired for me, is that they actually took the question that I had and sent it to the analyst that specializes in DNA studies. And so when the analyst came back, this is what he explained in regards to what he meant by African immigration and how that pertains to my DNA makeup. And so this is on the 26th of April at 1529. It says, I hope this explanation helps. It says, African immigrants refers to an ethnic group of Americans, citizens or residents of the United States, with total or partial ancestry from any of the black racial groups of Africa. The term may also be used to include only those individuals who are descended from enslaved Africans. So this is when, the Great Migration happened, slavery happened in America and across Europe, etc. But this is where it gets very interesting about what it says about my DNA. About my DNA in regards to the African immigrants. It says this group, the African immigrants, is significantly, not partially, not somewhat, but significantly different from North African and African groups, and that their genome is the following: is 73.2% African, 24% European, and 0.8% Native American. So in other words, the DNA makeup that is in me, which has a strong connection to the African immigrants, they're saying that it is vastly different than the natives of Africa. And that in my genome, what they have discovered was the average percentage breakout is that I am 73.2% African, 24% European, and 0.8% Native American. And it goes on to say the genetic history of North Africa has been heavily influenced by geography. Remember when we look back at the chart, how they had a cluster of Africans with a good tie to me in the North African portion. That is because of the mixture that happened that we spoke about earlier. And it says the Sahara Desert to the south and the Mediterranean Sea to the north. As a result of these geographic influences, the genetic profile of North African population is a complex mosaic admixture of European, West Asian, and Sub-Saharan African influences to variable degrees. Lastly, now this is what it speaks of the actual, indigenous native Africans that they're saying that we are significantly different from. It says the Sub-Saharan African groups show far less, not some, not little, but far less admixture than North African and African immigrant groups. So this here is saying that the indigenous native Africans, which resides in the core of Africa, remember the portion that I told you that there was no genetic marker picked up from that central region of Africa? It's saying that those people have far less mixture. There's a far less mixing than that of the people of North Africa and African immigrants, which means that our genetic makeup is vastly different than the genetic makeup of the Africans that is residing there today. So once again, I said to you earlier, but that means that many of us, me especially, because this is the DNA traits in which it is pinged off of for this particular study, is that I am 73.2% African, 24% European, and 0.8% Native American. So the question is, where did the European and Native American piece come from? So a quarter of us is European. This is when you have to search your biblical history books. All right, so where could this European influence come from in our genome, in the African immigrant's genome, in which it makes up our current structure, our molecular DNA structure the way it is? So the scenario that I present to you is, imagine if we are the original Israelites. What point in history could there have been a mixture of African and Europeans which took place that gave us that 24% European mixture? This would be when the Greeks and the Romans occupied Israel. Where would the 0.8% Native American piece come from? This can date back to the time when the Babylonians conquered Israel, and also when Israel was under the control of the Persians. And so up top it says that here's a response from the analyst. So you see, this is the response of the analyst. This is not somebody who just studies some history book and they're just coming up with some random information, but a person who specializes in DNA study was the one who broke it out and explained this breakdown of my genome. All right, and it says, if you have any further questions, please don't hesitate to give us a call, which I'm probably going to have more questions to ask them in the future about this percentage here, because what this is showing is that when we go back to the original map, right, when we go back to this map, this is the concentration of the people group in which I come from. So they're saying that from this people group, there's a mixture of 72% African, 25% European, and 0.8% Native American. Alright, so now that we discover some interesting information about how my DNA has been scattered to different parts of Africa, like you see, you have it down here in Yemen, you have it in Western Africa, in Egypt. We're going to go and look at some quick information about the Jews in these regions. And so going to Wikipedia, of course, not the most reliable of sources, but it does a decent job getting some information out. It says the Jews of Balad al-Sudan, right? It says describes the West African Jewish communities who were connected to known Jewish communities from the Middle East, North Africa, or Spain and Portugal. Various historical records attest to their presence at one time in the Ghana, Mali, and Songhai empires, then called the Balad as Sudan, from the Arabic meaning land of the blacks. Jews from Spain, Portugal, Morocco, and later years also formed communities off the coast of Senegal and on the islands of Cape Verde. This place right here. So this here is the western northern part of Africa that they're speaking about, where Jews had their settlements, and also in Cape Verde, which is this area where there's also my DNA pattern. So going back, says these communities continue to exist for hundreds of years, but have since disappeared due to changing social conditions, persecution, migration, and assimilation. Going down at the bottom, let me scroll down a little here. It says, according to most accounts, right, the earliest Jewish settlements in Africa were in places such as Egypt, Tunisia, Morocco. Jews had settled along the upper Nile of the Elephantine in Egypt. These communities were augmented by subsequent arrivals of Jews after the destruction of the Second Temple in Jerusalem in 70 CE, where 30,000 Jewish slaves were settled throughout Carthage by the Roman Empire Titus. That is this region right here. Alright, so going to a different website that adds more information about what happened to the Jews following the destruction of Israel, the Temple of Israel in 70 AD. It says, in his book, From Babylon to Timbuktu, Rudolf R. Windsor gives an account of this gathering of the Israelites. It says, in the year 65 BC, the Roman armies under General Pompey captured Jerusalem. In 70 AD, General Vespasian and his son Titus put an end to the Jewish state with great slaughter. During the period of the military governors of Palestine, many outrages and Alright, so it says many outrages and atrocities were committed against the residue of the people. During the period of Pompey to Julius, it has been estimated that over 1 million Jews fled into Africa, fleeing from Roman persecution and slavery. The slave markets were full of black Jewish slaves. Millions of Israelites who escaped the persecution of the Roman-Jewish War fled into interiors of Africa. In his book Jewish Roots in Africa, Mr. Lichtblau, speaking of the Israelites that ran into Africa, says this: pressed under sweeping regional conflicts, Jews settled as traders and warriors in Yemen. Yemen, my DNA trait. The Horn of Africa, another DNA trait in a Somalian region from me. Egypt, once again, a pattern for me. The Kingdom of Cush and Nubia, North America, Punic settlements, Carthage and Volubilis, and areas now covered by the Marinacea, I think that's how you pronounce it, Marinacea or Marinatania. More immigrants follow these early Jewish settlers to northern Africa. So once again, when we go back to the chart, northern Africa, there's something going on here. And so after screening through the rest of the package, it speaks about, the DNA basics, historical migration, and I'm, being blown away by the information I discovered in the first 2 pages. I was thinking, like, what else am I going to learn? Like, what other surprises that I might find in this? Now, mind you, this article, this document, it's a official document. It's not some kind of Wikipedia document that you can pull out. This comes from a legit DNA company that actually specializes in understanding, DNA patterns and the way how DNA dispersion was affected by migration. They are really in depth about what they do. And so as we continue on in the pages, it speaks about migration to the New World. Things you find in the history book, like the Neolithic Revolution and Pacific expansions. It covers in depth in how migration occurred. It talks about the Bantu expansions, the Eurasian expansion, the Great Migrations, the medieval and early modern Europe. And so it continues on. And as I reached the last page, I seen something in here that completely shocked me. I was like, whoa, how did they manage to get that information in there? Like, is that even, did somebody overlook this? Because if somebody would have actually seen this in here, wouldn't that cause some major backlash as to why they permitted this to slip by? But when it comes down to it, we all know that the DNA doesn't lie. And so when we go to the very last paragraph, in the outline that says, back to Africa, humanity's forgotten migration from the Middle East and beyond. Go to the last paragraph and let's read what it says. It says, beyond the genetic ties, cultural ties between Africa and the near Middle East are very evident, specifically in the case of indigenous native Hebrew Jews. the greatest secret of Africa that has never been told, and Christian Europe has been seeking to conceal for the past 2,000 years, is that the African origin of the concepts, doctrines, sacramental practices of religion, and the documents that became the foundations of Christianity in Europe. Did you know that the names of Abraham, Isaac, Esau, and Jacob were all derived from African tribal words and names? Did you know that the earliest Hebrew name for God, Adonai, was derived from an African tribal word? Did you know that other name of God, Yahweh, was derived from an African tribal god? Did you know that the names of the authors of the Old Testaments are not Hebrew or Jewish names, but transposed African tribal names? Christian Europe has never known these because it has never known the African linguistics and cultural side of the biblical story. When I seen this, I was completely blown away, and it all makes sense now. I don't need to go into detail to even explain what this is trying to say, but what I will do is I will leave it up to you to make your own decisions, because I know I have made mine. And the bottom line is, the DNA does not lie.